scaredy cat. I used to live in a very old house on 3rd Line. It looked like it should be condemned, but I was desperate for a home. From the start, we were surrounded by all kinds of creepy noises and feelings. To stay sane, I made myself believe it was mice, bats, or rodents making the creepy noises. It was a 2-story house, but we only used the 1st floor. On that level, it was mostly creepy sensations. Walking through cold spots were common. Cringe spots were frequent too. Those are spots that make you cringe because it feels as if a spiderweb has fallen on your soul. We never used the 2nd floor. It was very uncomfortable and felt as if we were trespassing. Despite the 2nd floor being empty, there were always noises up there. The creepiest was the sound of bare feet slapping across the floor, or heavy shoes dragging. Definitely not rodents or bats. Being alone, I never checked on the sounds as they happened. Our poor cat Stimpy got the worst of it. He saw things. He could be calm and curled up, then suddenly fluff up, hiss, and race across the room. Other times, he got backed into a corner by an invisible force, hissing and growling at nothing. About once a week, something chased him around the house. Our cat's frantic fears what scared me the most. In my angriest voice, I'd yell, "Get out!" at the invisible thing. Sometimes the cat calmed down after that. Sometimes he didn't. It was one of the creepiest, darkest, oldest places I've ever lived in. I was so happy when I could finally move out of that house. The house is now gone, but I still get creeped out just by driving past the property. Guess I'm still a scaredy cat. The follower. I was riding around with some family late at night when an argument broke out. The driver sped dangerously down Seneca Road. I knew a bend and bridge were coming up. Afraid we'd crash, I demanded the driver to stop and let me out, and he thankfully did. In the smothering dark, about 3 a.m., I hiked up Seneca Road between 2nd and 1st Line. Res roads in the 90s were dark as hell. I think street lights are just starting to be put up at intersections. In the distance, I could see a light near the intersection of 1st Line and Seneca. My aunt lived up past 1st Line, so I decided to hike to her house. It wasn't long before I heard it, something rustling in the bushes beside the road. Something large. It followed me. I tried to ignore the sound, but it was so close. I didn't look. I was too afraid. Instead, I focused on the light at the intersection and walked faster. The follower in the bushes walked faster too. I told myself it was the sound of my own footsteps echoing, but I knew it wasn't. Footsteps crunching on gravel sounded nothing like shuffling and snapping through the bush. I speed walked through the hellish dark to the lit intersection. The next road was blacker than the one I had just walked. I knew too, the road ahead was mostly lined with bushes. I stood in the middle of the light. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to stand there till daylight either. My aunt lived Around 10 to 15 minutes down that very dark road. It's not that far, I told myself. I gathered my frayed wits, stared hard down the road, and started walking. Within a couple of minutes, the follower was back. I walked faster, but the follower kept pace. I did not dare look into the bush. I only stared at the road and tried not to think of scary red stories that I was told growing up. To calm myself and drown out the crunching and snapping sounds of the follower, I whistled, and I actually started to calm, especially knowing each step took me closer to my aunt's. Then a new noise stopped me in my tracks. I heard the noise again, this time closer. Something whistled out from the bush. I stayed perfectly still. Then, in the terrifying night and silence, 3 loud whistles echoed out of the pitch black bush. I snapped out of my terror and ran the whole way to my aunt's house. I had forgotten the warning from my elders. Never whistle outside at night. You'll attract things that will whistle back. Splashes in the dark. When I was a kid, my cousins came to live with us at our Gram's house. We liked to explore the bush around her house despite being told not to. One summer day, me, my sister, brother, and 2 older cousins wandered almost the whole concession through the bush. On the way back, me and my cousin Dee hung back from the rest. By the time we broke through the shrubs at the back of Graham's yard, the other 3 of us were already inside. And then we heard the most terrifying sound. Kids crying due to a butt whooping. We assumed the others were being spanked for roaming around in the bush. I sure didn't want a butt whooping, so we ran away. We marched northwards through the bush, then turned onto Chiefswood Road. We followed Chiefswood to 5th Line. Our aunt and uncle lived at the end of 5th Line, so we turned down their road. It took another half an hour or so to get to our uncle's house. We knocked, and no one answered. A new house was partly constructed on the other side of the driveway. Me and my cousin ducked inside and waited. Dark came quickly. The darker it got, the scarier it got. I think we both tried to pretend we weren't afraid. We were just a couple of little kids hiding out in the house at the end of a dark, desolate, dead-end road. Nothing to be scared of, right? I wasn't afraid until we heard splashing noises in the watery basement. We went dead silent. Something splashed loudly around in the dark downstairs. I don't know about my cousin, but I was terrified. If anything came up those stairs to get us, we'd both be dead meat for sure. There was nowhere to run. Car headlights cut through the dark. A car crunched up the driveway and shut off. We heard car doors open and shut, and then voices disappear into the house. My cousin and I made a mad dash down the stairs and out of the unfinished house. We banged on Uncle's door. Uncle answered right away. He was surprised to see us. He fed us and asked us how the heck we had gotten to his place. We told him what happened at Graham's, and then he took us right back home. My cousin and I promptly got the whooping our dumb runaway butts deserved, and we also found out later that the others hadn't even gotten any spankings. To this day, I still hear the sound of those footsteps splashing through the shallow water and wonder what the hell was in that basement that night.